Hello, everybody. Happy Sunday. Let me type in this little description for today. So today we'll be talking about vulnerability is power with at Raw Rights and at GariTalks. Sundays at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hey, Nate. Hello, hello. Pin comment. All right. So, yes, today we're going to be talking about vulnerability and how vulnerability is power. I will share. Hello, Ra. I'll share why we came into this in a moment. Okay. Talking about what it is to us, how we've kind of experienced it, what are some misconceptions and challenges to it, and some reflection questions to consider as we progress through the end of the year and continue to take stock. What it do, Ra? How are you?
What's up? What's up? I'm good. I was just spending like the last 5 minutes trying to figure out this lighting and stuff like that. I was like, I'm working with some stuff, but and then I heard this Alicia Keys song. I didn't know I needed to hear on a Sunday
Hey,
until I
what
did.
song?
Um, Unbreakable. It's like a classic. See, I was gonna start up playing it, but I was
Play
like,
it.
all right, wait. Let me see if I can. All right, let me get it. We are right here. But nah, I was like, I heard this song. I was like, yeah, this song is fire. All right. So, this is like the live performance of it. Hey, wait. What up, Allie? I want y'all to listen. Wait.
Clap your hands, everybody. Clap your hands. Come on, keep it going. Clap your hands, everybody.
Wait.
Clap your hands, everybody. You ready? Come on. We could fight like Ike and Tina.
Ike and Tina.
Or get back like Bill and Camille.
It's like a nice, just warm feeling. I went to a Starbucks and I was like, are they playing this jam in
here? It's the vibe.
He ain't no different from you, and she ain't no different from me. So we got to live out our dreams like
people on TV. Unbreakable.
So as we build our vulnerability, I just think about oh, see, I be in my feels and I feel it and it's cool, It's I think about the topic we're going to talk about today just in terms of vulnerability and being power. And I want to just pay homage to a young student of mine. Her name is Joy. And she had brought up.
Of course.
She had brought this up. So it was when she said it, I thought about just, different touch points in my life and how vulnerability has almost been key to strengthening a lot of bonds. I also think about the risks that you feel before you are being vulnerable, and it encompasses so many different capacities. It might be just sharing your thoughts. It might be saying sorry. It might be, it takes so many different forms because I think it's just remembering that it comes in so many different forms. In terms of that vulnerability and how the responses of those around us when we choose that route at times scar us. They're like little wounds, and we think about from just our childhood and just our interactions with vulnerability in its different forms and how is that met with. You know, it might be you expressing this excitement about an idea that you like. I wasn't even sure if I was going to tell anybody. You know, it could come in that form. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it could be acknowledging your faults. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I haven't really ever said this out loud to anybody, and this feels crazy for me to do. But you feel so uplifted as a result of doing that, you know, of that release. But also just being real about the challenges that come with that, you know? And you feel it internally when it's like one
Mm-hmm.
of those vulnerable moments. And people feel it on different planes, but I just think about that. I'm talking too much. We gotta get into intros and all that.
It's an IG live where you talking, man. So this is how it works. I was actually going to ask you a question. Well, also, can you introduce yourself?
Oh,
And
yeah,
I'll introduce myself.
yeah, yeah. My name is Raheem Wright. I am a author. I am an educator. I'm a facilitator and just a compassionate leader and community builder. I love bringing people together because that's we're better together than we are apart. So yeah, that's me.
Yay. Tia, what you cooking? Let us know. Thank you for joining us. I'm Gary. My pronouns are they, daddy, DADDI, and I am an educator, facilitator, social emotional strategist. I really enjoy these things we call shadows. I love emotions, the challenging ones, and making sense of that for ourselves. Recently, I was having a conversation about awkwardness, and I'm a firm believer that there are situations that can be awkward and how they unfold, but I generally think it's how we feel about the thing that makes it awkward, right? It shapes how we interact with things. So, I mean, social emotional learning is essentially that our emotions and emotional state and like the things we carry, they affect the way that we learn and the way that we show up with other people. So, I know that I've been a person who's been blessed with a lot of community, but also experienced a lot of challenge around community. Um, and being vulnerable has been one of my most saving graces. And I think being vulnerable with ourselves is where it always starts. And that's kind of the work that I do. And that's also what this conversation is about. I'm coming into this conversation with this stay soft tattoo, which is backwards, I believe, for y'all. But I got that while I was in Miami, but it's something that I have constantly thought about. A lot of my tattoos have like little aphorisms with them. So like it's like in a world that's trying to make you hard, stay soft. Remember the importance of staying soft. And for me, softness is exactly what I was saying, this vulnerability. This for me, I defined it as like, well, first of all, vulnerability is like the ability to be vulnerable. Vulnus in Latin is for the word wound. So it's very interesting, like this ability to be wounded. Because if you put your heart out there, it's a risk. And so the chance of you getting hurt is increased because you have put out your truth. And I think um, it's that willingness to be courageous. Um, and I think courageous is because we think of bravery, which is like, I don't know, kind of doing it even though you're afraid. And I think that's part of courageousness. But courageousness, it comes from the word for heart. So it's coming from the heart. And um, yeah, so I think when we allow ourselves to admit what is on our heart and not necessarily come in with the right answers or have the right thing to say or like like I know how this is gonna go and I'm gonna influence and manipulate the situation to be what I want it to be versus like I'm gonna be honest about where I'm at and I'm genuinely trying to seek a connection. So that's a lot of what vulnerability means to me. This willingness to put yourself out there and speak what is on your heart. And I think what you were saying, Ra, is so important too. I got a lot of my rooting of vulnerability and what I understand from it from Brene Brown, an amazing researcher. And she was saying how the only way to defeat, right, or build resilience, because you can't ever eliminate shame entirely, but the only way to build resilience is through connection, what she called ordinary courage, which is just sharing your story with people. However, you got to be careful who you share your story with, because sometimes you share a shame story with the wrong person and you end up in more shame, like you were saying about this with the being vulnerable and how was that responded to when you were younger.
Yeah, yeah. It's again, it's those things scar you, and you may not even notice the scars, but it's like that resistance to even go through that route again, or go through that experience again,
Mm.
and go through it, you know? And it's also this understanding that not everybody's going to respond the same way to your vulnerability. But it's hard though, because you be like, dang, yo, it could come in the most, like the smallest of forms. Like you share a really intimate song or something you created, and you get the oh, you know, it's
Mm.
like dang, like oh man, you know, it's scarred. You like that hurts, yo.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think about this in so many different levels, and what you said about courage too. It's it's just interesting how vulnerability is I think about how we should equate it with being courageous. However, it's also this perception of it being perceived as weak when you are vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, there's so many misconceptions with that. However, when we see it though, you like I don't know, like I think about what you said though too in terms of the shame though and those shame moments. However, it's like I've seen majority of the time sort of love went out because it'd be like it humanizes people when they choose to be vulnerable.
Yes.
Some people
Yes.
get really uncomfortable and unsettled by that because it's something they may have never experienced before. They may have never ever felt from you before. They're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, like this is an emotion I'm not used to seeing this person display.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like for some they don't even know how to react or respond to it because it may not have been something that they've revealed in themselves.
Mm. I've read something about how we're able to meet people as much as we've met ourselves. Something like that. Makes sense. um, what you said, there's so many things that you said that I wanted to respond to. Um, thinking about this, aligning it with courage. And obviously, if the word comes from wounded, I think about the way we think of things that are wounded as weak, or like, like if you think of a wounded animal on the side, it's like, oh, just put it out of its mercy, or put it out of its misery, be merciful and like kill it. Um, but it's a very vulnerable position to be wounded and to allow yourself to be wounded. Um, I wanted to ask you a question about shame, but before that, let me look at these comments. Tia's making bacon and egg fried rice with seaweed chips crushed in. Okay, yes.
They
Be
use your
strong. What'd you say? They use your hurt to hurt you. Yes. I was going to ask you, when, when was the first time you encountered the word vulnerability? If you could recall that.
mm, I can't recall the first time I heard it.
Yeah. Or a resonant time.
Okay. Um I think one of the first times, like again, I'm thinking in the context of just education. I think about maybe in the context of war.
Mm.
When describing a war, so it was like
Mm.
vulnerable, so and so attack. I would say that was one of my sort of first interactions with the word sort of vulnerable and vulnerability, not
Mm.
the emotion layer to it.
Mhm.
It was almost signaled as something that was sort of like, oh, again, this is a line for attack, or this person is so open that is they could be they're more prone to being hurt, or this
Mm.
context. So I would say that's the first time. Um,
Mm.
when I would say understood it was a
Mhm.
little bit older and just I was a lot older. And I think as my relationship with tears started to change,
Mm.
because I had a relationship with just tears and crying and sort of being intimidated by me displaying that.
Mm.
It was almost like a next level of vulnerability, and then that
Mm.
got to understand it a little bit more. So yeah, what about you?
First time, also put a pin on that tears thing. Remind me about that. The first time I heard the word vulnerable, Hmm. It's a great question. I asked I asked people things and I'd be like, did I think about that for myself? Um, hmm.
Or the one
Again,
first time you would say it resonated with you.
right. Because
Let's think more
when I
about that.
asked that,
First time you hear
that's
it,
a good. Because
it's
I feel like
probably a
the
story.
first time I thought of the or heard the word vulnerable, it was describing an animal. That's why I keep using that as an example. Like, oh, that animal is vulnerable. So like, yeah, weak in that way, or dying kind of situation. And the first time, like, or the first time it really resonated with me was I think I shared a story and people were like, "Thank you for being vulnerable," and I was like, "Hmm." I guess I did like put myself out there in a way that is not the norm, or like shared more of myself in a way that is more intimate than classically is shared. Um, and it was, I think, in front of a large group of people. So that's when I would say it was the first time I felt that, or like was like, oh, like sharing my stuff, my truth is significant to other people. Like speaking about, I feel like it was in an affinity group for like being biracial. It was the first time I was ever connecting with other people who were biracial. So this is like 10th grade. And I think I was sharing like my story and people were like, "Wow, thank you for being vulnerable." Because I think I had because people were sharing a lot of stories, but I have a willingness to share like the dark things that have happened or like the fucked up things that have happened to me. And I feel like not everybody is, but then they resonate with it. And so they're like, "Oh, thank you for that." So yeah, that was the first time I heard the word vulnerable that was not applied to like an animal or a war, like you're saying, or strategy, but emotional vulnerability.
And
Hmm.
I think about just
Thank
misconceptions as a man,
you. Mhm.
um
Right, here we are back to the tears. That's what I wanted to talk about with you. Yeah.
and then it's
What
just
is,
like, oh go ahead.
I was just going to ask a question to kind of guide you. But like, I'm curious as to how you were taught vulnerability as a young man, as a young boy who then developed into a young man. What space was held for that? What
Hmm.
examples did you see of that or not see of that?
In a lot of ways it's like the way that I remember just growing up, it was like a lot of things were felt but not shared always.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
I feel like I was the one at times being the most talkative or wanting to sort of like have sort of those levels of conversations
mm-hmm,
within the context of my family. Uh, it wasn't something that was direct, you know. I kind of just paid attention. I like I think about my relationship with vulnerability came from a lot came from observation.
mm,
Um, because at times, again, I would see it in my mom's always doing things for others, even if again, even if she wasn't in the best state, she always made sure that everybody else was okay. So it was, but she, at times wouldn't signal it, but I would feel it.
mm, mm-hmm,
Like observation of knowing someone, is in a vulnerable state at times, but not talking about it. Yeah, and again, it wasn't something that was directly taught to me. I kind of just paid attention to the people around me. I would say closest thing to vulnerability was just like, I think about the many lessons my granddad taught me, and
mm,
he would just talk about how adults talk to kids, and I think about
mm,
that layer of it. He just was like, yo, like how's like a grown person cursing at like a 4 or 5 year old for making a mistake?
mm-hmm,
And just thinking about like how exposed and how shameful and how vulnerable that young kid feels for not.
mm,
So we would have a lot of those conversations because again we would just see different families like kind of barking on their kids. So I,
mm,
that's where my relationship to vulnerability kind of grew. And then I was considered a sensitive boy. So tears were something that we shed in private but rarely in public. you know
mm,
it's like you gotta go handle that. You gotta go process that. I think it wasn't the norm to be crying in front of your family all the time. Um,
mm.
so Because you know, society has a weird relationship with crying and being intimidated by it and not knowing what to do with it. And
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, I think about that in the context of our relationship and just our friendship, and then just when we were together, just thinking about that, not knowing what to do with it. So yeah, I'm not sure if that answers. That's a long-winded
Yeah,
way
it does. It
question.
does. I also have a question about what is your relationship with tears now?
My relationship with tears now is just I feel so much more open to feel them. Uh,
Hmm.
like I listened to Purple Rain and I started crying like on a Thursday morning. I was like, this is the first time I like heard this song in its entirety and watched the video, and I was like, dang, you know, you felt that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got a call concerning my pops too, so it was just like, and the song was about his father. So I think my relationship with tears now is kind of just like you feel it, you know, and also I could feel the emotion, but the tears may not come out. Maybe it's not the time for them to come out, but they're gonna come
Hmm.
out. That doesn't minimize my feelings towards it, you know.
Right.
Cause I'm not crying, it's not that I feel it to this degree. It's like, yo, I'm feeling this intensely, and how I express it is different than you, or different
Hmm.
that other person does it. But that doesn't mean that I'm not feeling.
Right.
So I would say that's my relationship with tears, and just being, you know, running away from that idea as a man.
Hmm.
Like you're not supposed to shed them. You it's whatever, you know. You, and that's why it's important for me to work with youth, to just make sure the younger you understand that. But you got to see it from the adults around you. For some of them, you got to see how that is, and the stress that comes with that, the pressures that comes with that.
Hmm.
Because it proves so much strength. And just thinking about strength and how we equate that with physical strength, and it's like it takes a lot of strength to move forward, so, and be vulnerable, and a lot of that just seems with being honest, and then it's the depth of the honesty.
Mm.
Yeah,
The depth of the honesty. That is real. I think when you say that, I'm thinking about the way we treat children, and we don't often give them a lot of depth. Sometimes. Sometimes. But often, I think more often than not, people anticipate that children can't handle particular conversations or particular things. And so we like cheapen the conversation almost. And then that in effect, it cheapens their ability to be resilient in those situations too. Yeah.
because I think it's sometimes just even the lengths of explanations, like you said, the assumptions are made that they can't handle it, or that they may not have the capacity, and it's like, why don't we give them a try to do that? Why don't we explain all the details behind the decision that they're making, if they're asking why? If they're
Right.
asking what you're doing, can you be honest with them and be like, yo, like, you know, I'm okay. I'm doing my best, and I'm making sure that I don't project any of my emotions onto you. Like, these are things that you could talk to somebody about, but it's having the choice and deciding whether or not to do that.
As you say that, and also about tears, I'm gonna share a story. So I was watching my brother once for a week. My mom was supposed to go to Taiwan, and she ended up not going. And he was really excited about it, so I decided, you know what, let me take you for a week, right? So he came through for the week. It was very stressful. I had a great time with him. Like, I love that boy. And also raising a young person is intense when it's just you in your space and like gotta feed you and do school. This online school shit is crazy with this, the way that things are shifting. But anyway, towards the end of the week, I think it was the day before he was leaving. And it was also like, this is not the capacity that I want to be with this boy. Like, I want you to be my brother. I don't want to be like your caretaker as well. But anyway, it was the end of the week. I was feeling stressed out. And I was also just the whole week empathizing with my mom. Like, bruh, it's hard out here being a single mom and like raising a young person. I have oodles of compassion right now. And I remember he went to go take a shower, and I was just in the space like crying. And he came over and he was like, "Are you okay?" And it was funny to be like, oh, in this moment I have a choice, right? I could be like, yeah, like wipe it off, like, yeah, but it's fine, like I'm okay, which I feel like I got a lot of. Or like, I was like, honestly, Michael, I'm not okay. I'm not like, I was like, I want to support you so much, and I just see how much work you have, and it really breaks my heart to know that you're 9 years old, like doing so much work. This is the work that I did in college. Like the amount that you stay up is how much I was staying up in college, and it really makes me sad to experience this. And like, I want to just have fun, but like, we can't get to do that, and it's stressful. And he was like, I know, and you're trying your best. And I was like, and he's like, I appreciate you. And I was like, what? Like, we could have, it just deepened our relationship in a way that just like, I would have never known and never allowed myself to accept or be in if I had deprived myself, if I had decided to be like, oh, no, I'm good. And then he would also learn the example of like, we're not allowed to say when we're feeling bad. It's just a private moment that we do like almost shamefully in the dark. Like I was just in I was in the living room. I wasn't hiding, but like it was away from him. Um, yeah, and I was really proud of myself for like acknowledging that and
That's
him not being like, oh, like don't he didn't tell me not to cry, right? He wasn't like, don't feel that way. He was like, it's hard and I see you. And I was like, who is this kid? But it's just like,
that's what could be said and understood. You like, yo, because there ain't no judgments. And then it's just like, yo, but you trying your best, to have that sort of affirmation, though, like, I know, like, again, perfection is a myth. And what are we chasing after with that?
mm-hmm.
So
Perfection is a myth.
so what are we chasing with that? So it's like in those imperfections and the revelations of the imperfections, I think about for our young people to be like, oh, again, like it's okay to be imperfect.
Mm-hmm.
However, I know that you're putting your best, and it's just important to express that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, thank you so much for sharing that for real, because that and again, that's a 9-year-old, so you just run, you like, yo, I got to just hug you, like, thank you so much.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and cause like, it's also, I think what was powerful about that was me acknowledging, like, yo, I've been stressed out and I'm showing up for you in a slightly different way as well. So, like, I can do differently for you. You deserve differently too, and I want to acknowledge all of these things. Nate has a question. How do you hold space and address someone who's doing their best, but it isn't enough?
Mm.
That's a good question.
You want to start? You want me to start?
Let me read that one more time. Do you have a response already? Because I got to chew
No,
on
I
that.
think about just like enough for you, and then it's
Mhm.
enough for who?
Enough for who?
Because I think that's important too. Doing their best, but isn't enough. If it's like
Right.
if you have certain standards, then there's the need to express that.
Mhm.
And if it's not done in the capacity that you may not feel, and if that's something that you feel is something that's not allowing you to move forward because it's kind of a pattern of things that you might feel that is not going to change, then I think it's talking about that. Enough for who though? That's the thing.
Right. And then isn't enough for already addressed standards and expectations. Yeah. So for you, right? Because if it's been stated in the person, so how do we hold space and address someone who is doing their best but isn't meeting the expectations that y'all have set together?
Mm.
Sounds like a taking stock moment. And Dara also asked, and what do you do with someone you're trying to develop a relationship with who straight up tells you, I'm not going to be vulnerable? So there was a part that we had come to.
It's, it's somebody. If I think about if I heard that, and then I think about I said that to someone.
Give me both. What would you do if you heard that? What's your first response?
If I heard that, it's like, well then, again, like
Yeah. Hi.
I'm not gonna be vulnerable right now, but there's more to me as you get to know me. Word.
Yeah. Right, right, right,
But
right, right.
like I'm not gonna be vulnerable. I'm like,
Right. Period. That's just not me.
for me personally, where's the progression coming from?
Where's
Because
the protection coming from?
progression, just like we're not gonna
Progression.
know more about each other, like because the vulnerability reveals a lot. It reveals the sincerity and the authenticity of the relationship that's in front of you. I just I that and that's my own take on it. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And then I don't think I just wouldn't say that to anybody. I'm not gonna be
Yeah.
vulnerable. Like just
Right.
what? Like
Right. Straight up.
it's like how would I? So if I said that though, I would have to be okay with the person not showing any vulnerability either.
Yep.
Because if I then get frustrated by the lack of vulnerability coming from the other side, and I've already had my sense that I'm not gonna be vulnerable, it's kind of just like you done goofed, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't ask somebody to display something at times like that you're not willing to reveal to yourself. You like, I want you to be vulnerable as hell, but I'm gonna be standoffish and not say nothing.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That exposure to oneself, that revealing parts of myself to you that I made like, and to then met with like, I'm not gonna share anything intimate about myself or
Right.
whatever that not gonna be vulnerable means. I'm like,
Yeah. And I think, yeah, I would definitely unpack that for that specific thing. I'd be like, so what does it mean to be vulnerable to you? And exactly like Rob saying, like, so what's the progression of this if there's no vulnerability to be had? Because intimacy isn't that something ultimately that we're trying to build with like folks? And we don't have to be intimate friends with everybody, right? But like there is a level of intimacy. That's why people vary from acquaintance to friend to there's a familiarity aspect and there is a progression. Not everybody is like necessarily building a part of your life where they're going to be like your life partner or a part of your community necessarily, but like there's a progression to the relationship. So to both questions, Nate, to answer your question more specifically, because they're right, because I wouldn't even really know what to do with that. But both of them lead us to this. So Ra had said, if it don't add up, then you probably in the wrong class. And we're thinking like, if your spirit is yearning for something different than your current environment is providing for you, then it's time to consider, right? It's just time to consider. It's either we gotta decide, am I willing to be the change, right? Initiate this change that I'm trying to see. Do I have the capacity to do that? So in this case, Nate, how do you hold space and address someone who's doing their best, but it isn't enough based on what y'all have said? It's up to you now to make a choice. Am I going to continue to like show you how to hold space, right? Am I going to continue to share like what I want and like contribute to the space and trying to build this relationship one-sidedly? Or, are we gonna have a larger conversation? Are we gonna invite other people in? Like, are we gonna welcome different resources to try to ameliorate the situation and deepen the connection here? Or am I willing to explore different options to satisfy what I'm looking for? And I think that's the part that's challenging, and that's kind of what we've been talking about. Like, how do we decide if something is worth staying for and initiating the change and facilitating the change and developing it versus when do we leave? When do we not even leave, and something I love that Ross said is like, it's not even about a person leaving your life or they're dead to you or disappearing. It's the capacity in which that you relate to them has to shift because clearly you're looking for something that is not being fulfilled. And that creates pain. When I think about the root of all suffering is attachment, is because you are attaching a particular thing that is not, y'all are not on the same page.
and then it's this discernment between wants and needs. You really want this person to become the person that you may have envisioned and then it's just like, and then you got to be real about what you need. Do you need this coming from this person in this capacity? Do you
Mm-hmm.
look for vulnerability from this person and you're not getting it? And then a choice has to become, again, we come back to this choice thing because it's like, are you willing to accept that that person is not going to go there with you and then search for that sort of fulfillment in other areas, which are friendships, familiar relationships, and stuff like that? And just, I know who this person is, so that's what it is. Or you desire that from somebody I'm romantically involved with, and I have to make that decision. And that might just mean that like not the person to enable this person's growth in this capacity. And you got to be real about that. And then it's hard because at times you got, again, if it's a developing relationship or if it's one that you've been in for X number of time, then that sort of plays a part too. So, yeah. I think about the challenges of
Say
that
that again, Ron.
I think about the challenges and the circle,
It's choppy. You said the challenges in what?
the challenges that come with just being vulnerable, just in a different circle, you know.
Yeah.
Because how they vary from the family relationships to the romantic ones to
Yeah.
the friend ones, it's different challenges, and again, it comes back to those little scars that we may have suffered as young people as we're coming into our own. Then that creates, for me, again, I like to speak from our perspective. I think at times it created like a, I want to be close, but I'm still keeping you at a distance type thing after I was vulnerable, and I may have not gotten the desired outcome that I wanted from being vulnerable.
Mm.
And then it's just like, you came in with expectations of, if you were going to do this,
Mm.
gonna be,
Mm.
and it's like, you have to relinquish that part, I think, and not be deterred by the outcome. But it's hard though, because we humans and we feel stuff. So, and then it comes with the societal expectations of these different relationships to sort of have that sort of space for it, you know. we see,
Mm-hmm.
we see the images of the people on TV, or we see the ideal at times of sort of families coming together, but it's like, do we see like reality examples of that?
Because it's not peaches and cream.
It's not peaches and cream. Hell no.
No, it is not.
Because at times, oh, if your caretakers have solidified the image of you as a kid, and then you're being vulnerable and potentially calling out something that they may have done wrong or not at their best to sort of take care of you, then that's a different conversation.
Mm-hmm.
That's a tough conversation. That's a tough conversation. But it's like, can this person take criticism? Like, so with the vulnerability, then it becomes like, are my feelings that invalid? Is why this person responded the way that they did? Do you feel that invalidation? So,
Mm.
yeah.
Mm. I'm thinking about this experience that I had. Here's another story for y'all. And I'm also still thinking of this question of how do you hold space and address someone who's doing their best, but it isn't enough. Because this what we're saying about family too. It is how I feel sometimes about my family. So another thing about vulnerability that I've taken on, I know that I'm very vulnerable in my family, and I know that I know that it's appreciated because they'd be like, "There goes Gary," right? And it's also just the same energy of "There goes Gary." It's like, "There goes freaking Gary again." So it's an interesting persona to have. But okay, so recently, it was the new moon. It was a new moon and a solar eclipse on Monday, right? And so it was a time to release a lot of things, all of this. So I was feeling it's time for shadow work. I'm gonna do the thing. So I found this really cool post that had asked questions about like where do you feel limited, obligated, and not aligned? And then like if you had no fear, what would you be? And I've been thinking a lot about like holding my tongue around my family. Because again, I know that my vulnerability is a gift. I know this. And I know like my willingness. And I think the answer to the question too of like how do we hold space to address it is just like you really need to be bold and be willing to be like, yo, wants and needs, this is what I need to feel connected to another human being. And we're not here. You're not meeting my needs. And it's not a deficiency on your half. I'm just letting you know what I'm observing. And like if you need support, right? Because not all of us are raised in vulnerability. If you need support, then I can support you, ask you questions, and point out when you're being guarded or whatever. But it's also a willingness. Like if you're not willing, then I can't assist you. So with my family, recently I sent them in this group chat. I sent them the news about the new moon and just some questions I was thinking about. And then I was like, I also want to let you all know, like I'm releasing a lot of I judge myself a lot, and I use your voice to judge me. So I'm letting go of those things. I'm letting go of grudges. I'm letting go. I'm tired of this shit. It's like it's weird to feel judged by my family and realizing that I'm doing that to myself. So if I want something different, I'm gonna have to shift that, right? Because you do judge me, I'm sure. And also, it only really stings because I resonate with it because I'm allowing it to be, or I'm finding it to be true. You know, finding the reasons why I don't belong, and then there it is, right? And so it's interesting how that was received. One of my uncles was like, "Do you?" Right? And I was like, "Okay, so you took that the personal way." So now I know where we stand.
Wait, what's the period at the end? Was it a
No,
period
no
at the end?
period. Just do you, G. That's what it said, right? And I'm like, I just said, I'm putting down the fact that I'm constantly judging myself through your eyes, and you say, "Do you?" And my response was, "I always will," because I always will. And it's just funny that my aunt called me, and my aunt was like, when I saw your message, I was like, "That's beautiful. I'm glad that you are doing this for yourself." And I understood what you meant, and I also understand what he's saying. She was telling me, like, when someone says, "I'm letting go of grudges," the idea is like, "Oh, you was holding a grudge," and then we get upset about that. Um, versus like the what is actually being shared too. Anyway, it was just really a powerful moment to realize, like, this is why the vulnerability thing, you can't be doing it for other people. It has to be for you. It has to be what you are aligned to. If you're trying to say a thing with the expectation, like you're saying, if I'm going to do this thing and then you're going to do this thing back, then we're not being honest here. And we're going to end up in hurt feelings. If I had shared that expecting them to be like, "Oh my God, like, I'm so sorry," or right, applaud me, or even respond. I didn't expect them to respond, period. I was just like, "Listen, this is where I've been because I've been away from y'all. I want to check in and let you know this is where I am at. This is what I am doing. All right, have a good day." And I said that. I hope y'all have a beautiful day. Like, I just wanted to tell y'all this because I know you can, if you can't feel the energy, I'm addressing the energy. And it was just like, again, just really powerful to see how that was responded to. And now I know, right, who I can be vulnerable with. My aunt called me, we had this whole conversation, very vulnerable, and she was like, "I would check on you because you're my daughter, my niece, and also, like, I want you to care. I want to feel like you care about what I'm doing too." And I just think about how when you're vulnerable, you create the space for other people to be vulnerable, because now they could be like, "You said that thing and it made me uncomfortable," or, "You said that and I was like, actually, that's pretty real." And then when we have the unwillingness to do that, we take it, vulnerability, almost as an attack. So that's just something I was thinking about.
Mm, mm. Thank you so much for sharing that, yo. And it transforms and transcends the relationship too. And it's like, I think about just the uses of words and how people be like, "Yo, I just want you to be able to talk to me about anything." Anything?
Anything.
Anything? It's like, then those sort of things reveal themselves in time though too, because sometimes it just be so superficial when that thing gets said, because it's like anything but like, we can't talk about that stuff. Or if you come in critiquing me just then potentially enable me as a better person, then like, we can't talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not anything, so don't say that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the facade of, like, for some families they say that, but then the practice of it hasn't been that. Again, I'm speaking from the I perspective. I've seen this shift between, like, I think not getting a response depending on the depth of what I asked, to just us talking about it, and I don't, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe the motivations are different. Maybe they're at a different point in their lives where they're wanting to be vulnerable, but you, like, see that and feel that, and you're grateful for that,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't know. Those are the type of conversations that I sort of like. I just love having with people, and it's like, again, I'm gonna put myself out there because this is where I'm at, and I'm a bad liar. So let me just tell the truth, and then
Mm-hmm.
what happens, and it's like, oh, it took a lot of strength to even say those words. So for some people, again, that might motivate them to be like, all right, cool. So it's cool to be brave here, and it's not something that you get,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Mm-hmm. Setting the example. It's okay to be brave here. I love that. Like, this is a space. Actually, Hallie was saying this at the end of our live, how she feels very grateful to be in a space where she doesn't feel like she needs to come with her responses prepared,
Mm.
or come, like, correct, come with her shit collected, versus, like, we can come here and share and speak. And I want to also say that I appreciate that about you, that I feel that because the vulnerability, again, it is an intrinsically motivated thing, right? Like I am, I'd be caring about this on my own. And I also want to appreciate that you're a person who honors vulnerability and holds the space for it and cultivates it within yourself and with other people by asking these questions and opening yourself up to like the potential of people's responses. Like I think about when you told me people asking you how you are, people be like, white supremacy is on my mind, to be honest. And like that's a vulnerable thing because you could be like, I'm fine, or I'm thinking about a lot. But like to really be like, this is what I'm thinking about. You asked me, I trust you, and also I'm going to share. Um, because it's not about the other person too.
Because I at times, for me, again, I think I grew up with so much. I'm a sensitive person, and at times I would say I grew up suppressing a lot of emotions,
Mm-hmm.
suppressing those negative ones or those frustrated ones, as I think to really sort of confront the root of it. I would say at times, because anger feels easy, get mad, like that's what it is, and it's like. But to admit sadness or to admit sort of like disappointment, whether that be in yourself or just with other people around you, I think just how important that relationship is with vulnerability within the self as it sort of then projects itself out to the universe. Like, how vulnerable are you willing to be with yourself? And like, again, that's like a muscle. You gotta like work on that, you gotta work on that. And yes, anger feels easy because it's such a thing. I don't know, and I think we see so many responses of that is the norm to respond to things, and it's like, but we could just be vulnerable and be like, "Yo, what you did really hurt my feelings."
Okay, I see what you're saying. But I was like, anger feels easy. It's funny because there's a lot of people who actually struggle with expressing their anger, who suppress those feelings too, because it's like it feels weird to admit that you're angry because it means you care, or that it means that you've been wounded. Because if you think about anger being like the spark of a boundary being crossed, that's why you'd be mad.
Yeah.
Sometimes it feels weird to flex and be like, my boundary was crossed. But I understand what you're saying in terms of sometimes my mom in the past when we get frustrated or when you were saying sad, the default emotion she would go to was anger and frustration to kind of ward it off versus dealing with the underlying sadness. So yes, I hear what you're saying too.
Yeah.
And thank you, Dara, for writing it out too, and that helped a lot.
Thank you for giving me space to clarify that.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you. It was a question about anger. I'm curious. Okay, so I have two questions, but one I can think of. So, how do you differentiate or determine what are your wants and your needs?
For me, again, this is like a more of a introspective, recent sort of thing. It's just, I think discerning between the two is just thinking about the needs that you have in your life. I think of food, water, and shelter. I try to just keep it simple, food, water, and shelter, and I got people that care about me. So I would say like I have things like that I need. I think in addition to that, I got clothes on my back. So there's like simple things and move forward. And then I think outside of that, there's everything so many other things are wants for me. Because I'm like, yo, you lucky enough to wake up, and like just have a chance to keep trying to get the things that you want. But also understanding that you're not gonna get what you want when you want it all the time. I think that we respond is almost like we don't even know that has a chance of happening. Like, I really want this person to like me. But it's also acknowledging the real stuff, like that person may not feel the same way. You have to acknowledge that there's a chance of that happening. And really, when getting deeper to understanding that, then your response to not getting what you want changes. You like, oh, again, it's not apathetic, like I don't care, but there was a chance of that not happening. You know, I really want, materialistic thing, and something comes up and I can't get it. There was a chance that that couldn't happen.
Mm.
Or I want this person to see exactly the things that I'm seeing from my perspective. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
That's a want, you know?
Mm. That is a one, yes.
And really just being like,
Mm.
there's a chance that that might not happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just communicating to back to what Nate was talking about in his question though too.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So then that comes back around. If it's you've given space, you've given time, and you don't, it is not enough for what you may want
Mm.
in your life at that time, then you have to be honest about that. You don't have to. You have a choice to make on whether or not you're gonna be honest about that.
Mm.
Um, yeah. So
T says needs are basic essentials to live. I'm thinking very hard, as you said, like basic essentials like food, shelter, water. I'm also thinking about, I think Brene Brown says a human need is belonging.
yeah,
And so you said community too. And I noticed it. Yeah. So it was nice to notice the parts that are part of your needs list. But I was also thinking about like grace, basic essentials to live, like kind words or affirmation around you, you know? But it's funny because it's funny how we don't, it's interesting, right? Because you don't want to be externally motivated. You can't make your livelihood and your joy dependent on other people saying good things and nice things about you. And also for a child, I would say that it is like essential that they have nurturing,
mm-hmm.
emotional nurturing. I would say
Yeah,
that's a need of, and that's a need of mine. And that's why I think it's interesting. That's why I was curious as to how you determine your needs. Because like, sometimes we gotta get really real. Like if sex is really important to you, it's a need. Sex is one of your needs for connection. For me, it's not necessarily one of my needs, but it is, I have a need to, and I was thinking while you're speaking about wants too, I was like, for instance, to be understood. I was like, is that a want or a need? And I was like, that seems like a want to me, right? To be understood because like I want to be understood. Can I function without being understood? Absolutely. I do it all the time. Right? But like, but like compassion, that's something that I need. And I think that's how you determine the people who are close to you, the people
yeah,
who are willing, give them the list of your, you give them the list of your uh emotional, yeah, spiritual, emotional, mental needs, or your green flags, as Joelle and I called it, right? Or those kinds of things, and you're able to collaborate in that way. And I think that's how we can evaluate and take stock with people. So I think as I'm thinking about this vulnerability thing, we got to be honest about what it is that we need, right? If we need validation, or we need security in our image, security in who we are, I think it's so important to identify like how we're doing that with ourselves, and also just saying that, right? Like I need a hug, I need physical touch. That's like something I need. And being able to
yeah.
admit that to ourselves, I think that's the first step. Making even a list of
Mm.
that, your wants and needs, and then
Oh,
being able to bring that to another person and be like, these are my wants and needs, and we can have a full on discussion. So it's not like, oh yeah, I could provide this for you, but it's like, can you? Because I'm not playing. This is my wants and needs list.
yeah. And
Yeah.
I think about people hear that and be like, I need that. And again, people be like, they might laugh it off. Haha. Like, it's like, nah, but if I come at you that you're not providing that, then don't be surprised if I've already communicated that, and then that becomes a barrier, you know?
Right. Because we talked about it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So I think it's the
Right.
communication of that becomes like, and I appreciate you adding to that point though that we talked about sort of being real with the needs, if those things are important to us. Like I need
Hmm.
transparency and honesty,
Yeah.
um
And actually, as you say that too, and thinking about Nate's question, I finally have, yes, a story for this. So there was a person who I was building a friendship with,
you're a little bit
and
choppy. Wait 1 second.
oh, okay, cool. Am I back?
uh,
Are we
yeah.
flowing? Okay. This person and I, we were building a friendship, and they were telling me they had really centered, and because my need is like to feel safe in a non-sexual context. As a demisexual person, I need to feel that you're not just trying to jump in my guts immediately upon meeting me. That's something that is important to me. And so they were able to ensure me, like, yeah, I'm not trying to do nothing like that with you. I am just trying to connect with you. And I'm also letting you know that one of my needs, period, for love is physical touch. And I have a lot of boundaries around touch. And so we had a lot of conversations about it. And they would follow in like, hey, like, have you been doing any reflecting? Because you told me you would, about how you feel about your boundaries around touch. Because again, I'm going to reflect. I want to honor your needs. I'm never going to push you beyond your threshold. And also, I need physical touch to be connected with people. You need, mental stimulation, quality time. And I feel like we're doing those things, but my needs are not being met. And it came to a really real point where I had to be like, I'm not going to be able to provide that for you because I don't want that. I don't want that, and that's not how I see our relationship progressing. And if I can't even do it in a friend context, it's definitely not going to work in a more intimate context. And like that's when we had to get. And I wasn't. I think what I had, the way I had phrased it, because it's truly how I felt, was like, I feel attracted to you, like drawn to you, but I don't feel physically attracted to you. But I didn't have the words to say, like, I cannot provide you with your need. I cannot satisfy your need to have physical touch. I did say, I hope that you're connecting with other people so that you can have your needs met. However, like you're saying, you have to assess, is this something that's is it a non-negotiable for me? Or is it like, fine, I can get the touch from other people, but with you and I, we just not going to do that. And we had to determine, like, no, it does not work for us in this way. There were other stuff that came up towards the end of it, but that was at the heart, like, this doesn't work out. Our needs are not being met. It's unreciprocal. I feel like, and as they were indicating to me, I feel like I'm working really hard to help meet your needs, and I feel like you're not able to meet mine. And for a while, it felt real shitty, because it was like, wow, like I can't meet somebody's needs, like, so I suck. But then it's also like, if our needs are in conflict, it doesn't make one better or worse. It just, we really have to understand that our capacity for each other or in each other's lives is both limited and probably coming to an end.
And yeah, there's so many levels to just what you just said. Thank you so much for sharing that. And there's so many things I just was like trying to unpack quick, that's the vulnerability that's intimidating though too. That's like, it's almost like the final boss in like sometimes in like a video game, you gotta be real about that. And it's relinquishing that willingness to control the capacity of the relationship.
Ooh, the willingness to relinquish the control, the control of the relationship?
Like the capacity of
control the capacity of the relationship. My goodness. I need that on a t-shirt.
So,
whoa, yeah.
So that, I think about that, because I think about timing, just like romantically, and thinking about just like being like, yo, I'm not where you are. And having to admit, and you see the sort of other person's response, and then you think about whether or not to take back those words. But it's like, if I really meant those words,
ooh, yes,
sort of like ill will when I said them, and this was just me being honest, then yeah, because people ask questions they don't want to know the answer to, and just be like,
I have been guilty of this, yes. Right, you be like, damn.
So, but to getting to that point, and then like our wants and our needs, like we're humans, we change as things come with
thank you, Tia.
just it changes with time, the wants and the like, for some people certain wants but then become needs.
Mm-hmm.
As sort of circumstances change, priorities may change, one's alignment with oneself may change, and
it shifts. And that's why we gotta keep taking stock.
And then it becomes how susceptible are the people around you to that. and that knowledge that we are sort of like chameleons, sometimes in terms of like our ability to change form and sort of evolve. They want to
Mm-hmm.
just aren't ready when they answer. When they answer isn't what they want to hear.
Yeah. It reminds me of last week, Raul, when you said everybody want to be everybody want to be understood until it's time to understand. I feel like they're tired. They want to know the answer, but they aren't ready when the answer isn't what they wanted to hear.
I no, just thinking as a sort of a heterosexual male is like cutting somebody off, but then being the one to be cut off. You know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because some people don't like taking that L and just being like, "Yo, that," but they have at times no problem dishing it out. But
Mm-hmm.
a woman might be, or someone that they may be involved with, and whatever,
Mm-hmm.
like sort of like does that to them, they don't necessarily sort of respond. They don't necessarily respond in the way that they may have hoped that other person responded to when they sort of did that.
Mm-hmm.
So I observe things like that, and I'm just like making sure there's a level of consistency in my response to it. And you can't control the things outside of you, though, too.
Yeah.
So if somebody hits me and like, yo, I'm not feeling you X, Y, and Z way, I would rather it be like this. It's like, all right, cool. Like,
Right.
because if I sort of express that to somebody else, again, it's the hopes. You can't control it, but you want that sort of like, all right, cool. Like, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's like I could dish it, but I can't take it type thing, and it's and
That's also got to be vulnerable and admit that. That is something I've had to admit. Like, raise your voice with me. I'd be like, but you gonna catch me yelling. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it had to be really real. Like,
all them inspirational and vulnerable sort of posts we like on Instagram, and then we come to find out that shit applies to our lives. We be like,
every time.
oh, it's my turn. I gotta do that. Dang, like
Right.
I don't want. I ain't really trying to do that. Like, oh,
Yeah.
see, up the fist. Like, it's just, yeah,
Mm.
when it applies to you, then it just be like, all right, so you like that stuff, you do the heart on it,
I'm
but then
waiting.
now it's time to be vulnerable in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
What you gonna do?
Mm. Dara, I'm curious as to what do you mean that by the answer is wrong? I'm also where I'm thinking about this post that I saw. It was like a quote from Audre Lorde. It was like nothing. It's like nothing I accept about myself can be used against me to diminish me.
Can you say that one more time, please?
Nothing I accept about myself can be used against me to diminish me.
And that's where it comes to that power of the vulnerability. Because if you have been vulnerable, it's like, I don't know. I feel like a certain strength gets built up. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to just
That
move,
shame resilience.
you know?
Mm-hmm. Because if you think about it, when people call you out or whatever, they use your things against you. It's shameful. You'd be like, like you feel away. But if you're ahead of the game because you're owning your thing, and not because like, oh, I'm gonna get ahead of it and say it before everybody else, but like understanding your motivations, understanding the impact of how it affected people, like just having your own peace with it, understanding that it happened, being like, it sometimes some things happen, and like I think a big part of forgiveness is even just accepting the fact that the thing happened. And I think when you are able to do that with yourself, especially about things that bring you shame, they cannot bring you shame, or it's more challenging to use them against you. I'm reading here, Dara. I've dealt with a lot of scared people, so I'm like, you could love me, you're just scared. I've literally talked a man out of breaking up with me because he said he wasn't ready. Because I was like, but you can be. So, absolutely, Dara. There's this person I would recommend you following. it's called Rising Woman. She actually has this program called Becoming the One, which is like instead of looking for the one, become your one, right? Because she's like, we got to believe people. And this is also about vulnerability. It's funny how it be happening in small moments, right? Because we got to believe people when they say things. Like if someone's like, I'm not ready, if somebody's like, I'm selfish, if somebody's like, I can't care for you, I can't be there for you, we need to listen instead of being like, I think about me as a person who is in prep for prep. If anybody doesn't know, prep for prep is an achievement program. You get it in 5th grade, 14 months of like rigorous education catch up. So you go from public school to private school. My point of bringing that up is that I have been conditioned very much in my life to go through things. And like, you can go through anything, right? If you people can go to the army, people can become nocturnal, people can shift, people can like do crazy things with their body, do tattoos. Like we're able to do so much, and still that doesn't mean that we need to be doing all those things. And also, I think a lot of the time when we force ourselves to do things, we get used to a particular thing. So we expect other people to also get used to a particular thing, or shift because we can, or shift because we were made to, you know? And so I think about that a lot. Like I was forced to change a lot of the time. And if I didn't, I would be beaten. Like, you're bad, change that shit right now. And if I see your face about it, I'm gonna beat you some more. And so obviously I don't come with the same level of violence to people, but it's like, if I can change, you can change. And that's not, I mean, yes, humans can change, but that's not a reason to be like, so you gotta change. Because people change when they're ready. And I think that's so interesting about being vulnerable, the vulnerability of saying to somebody that you're not ready. And like you were saying, Ra, like the reaction, like, do you take it back now because you see another person's reaction? Like you can't.
Yeah.
Because especially if you're being honest, if you're lying, then that's another thing, right? But then if you're being compassionate and speaking from the heart, like I'm afraid that I will hurt you, you know, I'm afraid that this is what's going to happen. I don't know. I feel like there's a different energy in that too. Like I think about with the conversation you and I had once, like me being like, I'm afraid of hurting you. That's why I kind of hold you at an arm's length. And after being able to talk about that, it's like, okay, that actually bridged the gap because we're addressing the fear. And that's a conversation we'll have another time too. But I think about if I was like, I'm not ready to be in a relationship at all with you, that's a different conversation. Because it wouldn't necessarily, I mean, we can unpack that, like, what does ready mean, etc. But like, something I'm learning that's challenging is like when people want to go, you got to let them. Because, and like you were saying too, Ra, like if I wanted to leave, I would want someone to honor that for me and be like, okay, go. Not because it's like it's already hard to say no. It's already hard to leave sometimes, and to have another person like holding you and being like, please, it makes it so much more challenging to honor what could be their intuition.
Yeah. That
I just had a lot of thoughts there.
No. It's it's taking the time to process that. Yeah, and that it's that acceptance point though too.
Yeah.
We hope
You see
that
Dara's point there too.
we see the possibility in others, but that's not always aligned with the reality and what ultimately matters and the possibility that they see for themselves. A word in its entirety, you know? What can they see from themselves? Are they appreciative? Are they appreciative of that, this possibility of being something different than what are they like intrigued by that? Or are they like, they may understand that they may not be ready for that. Or like not yet. Or, again, and that just, it varies in the people that you're dealing with.
Yeah.
I think so much of that though too. Man,
this is great. Thank y'all for being here, and thank you, Ralph, for having this conversation. Do you want to ask your question? Because I'm just this is like, I guess we have like some questions to close out too, since we're at 12:09. Thank you again for being here. Just some questions for y'all to think about. In addition to the like, how do we distinguish between our wants and our needs? What are your wants and needs? Write that down if you haven't already. But yes, go ahead, Ralph, because I just feel like we were talking about sometimes being the villain in people's stories too, and being okay with the fact that sometimes people are not gonna fuck with you in their story. Like if we're being
I feel like that was like 26 for me. It was like you can't always be the good guy. Even when you think you being the good guy, it's like, and being vulnerable sometimes, again, that may be revealing to somebody what they might not be, they may not be ready to hear it for themselves. So then it just be like, when you talk to them about that, when you bring this up, and I used to justify myself, I'm actually trying to control the capacity of the relationship, but I pretend I'm pushing them to greater things or some shit.
Thank you for being honest about that.
So you said my questions? Wait.
Yes, the one that you had asked about, do we value honesty or
Oh, do we
yeah.
value what? Dang, let me find this. Can you? Man, because I think I
I mean,
wrote.
I have it. I can ask it.
Okay,
So this was Ra's question, everybody. I just wanted to give you the credit for it because it surprised me when I saw it.
go ahead.
Are you on the Google Doc now?
I gotta get on my computer, but yo, go.
Okay, it's a little choppy anyhow. So Ra had asked a question, do you value honesty or appeasement?
Mm, 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 mm.
And the way he had asked it first, it was like wordy, and then he chopped it down to this. Do you value honesty or appeasement? That's something you really gotta reflect on. Do we want to be honest or we want to be comfortable and to be safe? Right? And I think safety is an interesting word, right? Because we don't want to be unsafe. And also recognizing that vulnerability is like low-key an unsafe practice. It is putting yourself in line of risk, calculated risk sometimes. But yeah, do we value honesty or appeasement? Some other questions we had are you trying, and this ties together, are you trying to become a better version of yourself for yourself? And that's why you need support from a group of people because we're doing that. Or are you trying to become a better version of yourself for another person? This was also Raheem's questions. And how sustainable is this?
How
Right,
sustainable
so I'll
is?
repeat. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's. Are you motivated by wanting to become a more complete version of yourself and recognize that there are things to learn, or is it like, I don't want to that person or that thing, I don't want to let it down, so like I almost need to straighten up my act and need to do it like that. And again, there's no right or wrong way to either one of those, but it's recognizing motivators and how
Mm-hmm.
sustainable is that motivation.
Mm-hmm.
Because do you get to a point where you get comfortable and then it just be like, all right, cool, so that person just like off my back about this thing now, so I can
Right.
like.
I'm very taken to this question that Dara asked a long time ago. They had commented on my post. It was like, do I want a man that I helped to create, like crafted him, or do I want a man who will reveal himself to me and I get to choose from there? That question, Dara, I don't know if you know, has sat with me for the longest. I bring it up frequently
Mm.
because it's like, do we value honesty or even ourselves being appeased? Because I think often when we think about appeasing, we're thinking about appeasing others, but do we also want to be appeased or do we want honesty to be delivered to us?
We say we want that, but it's how do we handle the responses when that's revealed to us?
You be dropping them gems, Dara. I'm gonna go find that.
So I think those are two questions that they could, like, I think people could
Y'all
just
could
say.
chew on. So yeah, so the two questions we have are, I mean, it's like three because they're kind of long, but the first one, do you value honesty or appeasement? And are you trying to become a better version of yourself for yourself? Or are you trying to become a better version of yourself for another person or group of people? And how sustainable is either? Honestly, it's up to you to decide.
And again, because people talk about how motivated they are to do things, and it's just like, if you motivated just to become a better version of yourself, like for yourself, just like this growth thing is cool.
You
I
see that,
want
right?
I want appeasement. I need honesty.
I
Mm.
love it.
Man, I want a craftsman. I need to have him reveal himself to me.
Mm. These are amazing. Actually, I'm gonna take a picture of this, Dara.
Snapshot though.
Yeah, I'm taking a screenshot. I think this would be really helpful for our next session too.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Dara, so much.
Thank you.
But yo, being real about that again, that crafting, because then people be like,
Crafty.
it's, and then oh, this woman ain't nothing. It's like, oh, you might have an investment in wanting to sort of help build, you know, you think, and then you come into the technical difficulties that comes with the crafting process and be like, do I really need a lot of stress that comes with this crafting process? And then it's like, you can't craft another human being because then it just be like, it's not going to happen on your schedule, boo boo. It's not going to happen on it. Then just be like, damn, this is not happening on my schedule. So what do I do with that?
You said, so what?
What do I do with that?
So what do I do with that, right?
Oh, yes. I forgot who was that by. Is that by Justine Sky? No. I think so. Maybe. Oh, it might be Dreezy? No.
Justine Scott, you right? Trust your first instinct.
Let's go. All right. So we 1216.
I appreciate y'all so much. Oh, to give you just a little quick tool that I've been working on. So Hallie actually introduced this in our Thursday live when we were talking about unpacking things and stuff. So there's two tools, but I'll share one. So she was sharing, so the ethos is, we need to become fluent in our own capacity, right? Fluent in the things that give us life, that bring us energy. And so something that she was doing as a practice was for the month, and I would encourage you for the rest of this month, because there's not that many days left, at the end of every day, ask yourself two questions, which is, what brought me capacity today? So what increased my joy, my livelihood, my excitement about life, gave me energy, right? And what killed my capacity today? And those are just two good questions to even start. The reason I want y'all to ask these to yourself is because obviously I've been doing this as I understand my capacity, but understanding our wants and needs is really important. And I think better understanding what brings us life helps us understand our needs. Because then we can be honest about that, because we have data. We see that this brings me life. And we can also acknowledge the things that do not bring us life and that bring us down, in fact. And then we can have a conversation about that. So I would practice using that tool and then considering our questions of, do we value appeasement or honesty?
And do we want, and then, oh my God, why am I forgetting this question?
Wanting to change?
Oh yeah, do you want to change because you want to become a more complete version of yourself, or is it on the conditional of having, like, for another person? Because again,
phrasing, y'all.
I'm just saying that changing becomes conditional. It becomes a condition based on the presence of someone doing X, Y, and Z versus I want to do this for me because whoever I involve myself with, but it would be romantic, familial, or friendship wise, they deserve this version of me.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. Thank y'all. And if you take anything away, vulnerability is for you, baby. And it's your power.
And once you start to develop that, you like, yo, so what's up? And there's so much clarity that comes with that.
Yeah. It's not like a walk in the park, right? We'll talk about more of the challenges around that we've experienced. And it's not like always uncomfortable, but it's like Ra has said before, the nervousness before raising your hand. But we go through it anyway. And you build more resilience as you do it more.
And then with the vulnerability, I'll leave on this. This is the last thing I'll say. Mm-hmm. We don't ride the wave we created. So I'm
gonna send y'all a song. Surfing. Kid Cudi.
See, I was thinking about Eat with Toby Negwe and his wife Fat.
Yes.
We don't ride the wave we created. So I'm out.
All right.
Enjoy the rest of y'all Sundays. And we'll see y'all next week.
Bye. Thank you for being here.
Mhm.